Fill your thirst beside the river. Wash the journey from your hands. Feel the comfort flow inside you. Come this far, you understand. Fear's not allowed, where dreams can be lost or found.
Hi, welcome to Healing Outside the Box. I'm Traci Crampton.
And I'm Rosemary Lachance, and we are Reiki facilitators.
And tonight we have a very special guest with us. This is Richard Gould. Welcome to our show.
Thank you.
Richard is an award-winning visionary artist, spirit medium, and master guide. He is the artist of a very diverse body of artwork designed to heal and inspire. In addition to that, Richard has received a rich and powerful education in spiritual practices, working with some very prominent masters. He's been equally influenced by Native American shamanism in his practice and has followed under the tutelage of masters such as Black Elk and Lakota Elder. Under their great influence, Richard has become adept at connecting with the spirit world, embracing the practices of dreaming, journeying, and the path of the vision quest, soul retrieval, and internal alchemy, as well as trance channeling. Dedicated to advancing spiritual awareness and the quality of life for all, Richard creatively combines his unique life experiences, knowledge, skills, and gifts in his teachings of spiritual alchemy, so that others may realize their own greatness and joy. Thank you for coming to our show.
Thank you. Pleasure to be here.
Thank you, Richard.
Thank you. Pleasure.
Okay, so we are going to start out with
We could start out where we tend to start out with. How did you come upon this journey?
Yes, exactly.
What led you through? I think one of the points that impressed me most when we went to see your lecture at the Soul Expo recently was how you felt that your journey found you. And sometimes you went kicking and screaming, that sort of thing, and that you just sort of gave into it eventually and followed it through. So could you tell us a little bit about?
Yeah, it's kind of ironic because I originally started out, I really had a strong passion to be in getting involved in the arts and to become an artist, and so I really pursued that. But as I was doing that, it seemed like spirit would kind of come out, and I'd have people who would end up in my life who would offer some really dramatic experiences for me and literally kind of invite me into it. I love to tell the original story was I worked with a shaman very early on. I was probably about 17 years old at the time. And I had met him. I actually went to a little boutique shop, and they, was kind of in the New Age days, and there was had everything from wonderful clothing and beadwork and all of that stuff. And there was a man in the back who was doing tarot. And so I had gone over there, and a friend of mine had said, "Oh, you got to go and check this out. There's some nice artwork and stuff." And while I was doing that, I had noticed a young lady who was very attractive, and I was kind of thinking in my mind, boy, maybe I can mull over there and try to see if I can meet her and stuff. And this voice whispered from behind me, "Nah, she's not your type. Don't even do it." And I turned around, and there was this elderly man who was just kind of smiling and just kind of walked away. And that was Chester. That was my first encounter with him. The second time I went back, and of course that kind of was very unnerving for me. So I had told my friend that the strange guy that was over there, I said, "Oh, that's Chester. He's the one that does the readings." And so I had kind of forgot about it. I went back a couple of weeks later, and when I walked in there, now mind you, I hadn't been there in weeks and wasn't sure if I was going to go back or whatever. I walked in there, and this friend of mine said, "Oh, Chester's waiting for you in the back room." I'm like, "What do you mean he's waiting for me?" He said, "Yeah, he's going to do your reading." And I'm like, "I didn't make any appointment. I didn't set this up." She goes, "Don't worry about it. It's for free. He wants to do it for you." So I had gone back in there, kind of reluctantly met with him. And within 10 or 20 minutes, he literally told me my life history. I mean, told me things about myself that nobody besides me would know, which, of course, that's very unnerving and very shaky. And at the end of all that, he said that you can do this as well, and you have this calling to do this if you should choose this path. But he says, "I'll give you a warning that we all get, and that is once you choose to go down this road, you can never turn back."
Isn't that
So
true?
I thought very hard about it.
Yes, it is true.
It's very true, I find. But it's a good thing, and I really want to stress that, because for me, I would never want to go back. I mean, what I have gained from this journey and all the adventures, and just kind of like the deeper interconnection that I have, the sense of peace and well-being, and just an understanding of how the universe works, that I'm comfortable in the world, and I feel like I'm part of it, and it flows rather than being a struggle. And it's priceless. I mean, there's no way to put a price on that. And then as I continued on, I had opportunities. I met this gentleman. I was actually, again, I'm a human being, so at one point in time I had suffered a lot of stress as I'm going through college and everything else, and a friend of mine said, oh, you ought to try martial arts. You know, as a form of relaxation. So I decided to engage in it, and I tried a few things, and nothing was really clicking. And this friend of mine had introduced me to somebody else who was studying a very kind of mystical, soft style of martial arts, which is called Tai Chi Chuan. So I saw it, and I really kind of fell in love with it, and that led me to his master, which set me on this whole path of following the martial arts and eventually getting involved with the meditation, the energy work. I basically studied Taoism and shamanism for about 25 years.
Looks like you've
now.
had quite the array of
Really?
practice.
Yes. Very much so.
Fantastic. And can you tell us a little bit about your art and how that's grown and developed and evolved?
Absolutely. And it's interesting because, and I want to share this also with you, that in the beginning when I was doing all these different things, and they were kind of separate. I mean, I was pursuing art, I was pursuing the martial arts, I was pursuing this kind of interest in magic and shamanism, but they seemed like they were all different directions. And it was very frustrating, and a lot of people would say to me, well, it's time you make up your mind and choose one, to be a specialist.
Right.
And I was always kind of resistant to that. And actually, literally 10 or 15 years into this, it finally clicked how this all relates and how it all connects. And so originally with the artwork, I started off, again, really aspiring to kind of share what's going on in my perspectives. But it's become an incredible tool for being able to convey not only spiritual communication, but also to energetically connect with other people, to assist them and to be able to go deeper into their own personal spiritual practices. Hopefully the work, the way it's set up, also contributes to inspiring them, and giving them a vehicle to be able to pursue their own spiritual practice or interest to a greater depth. In a lot of ways I do that. If you look at the paintings,
we're going to take a shot at Richard's paintings.
The way the paintings are designed, like, again, for a long history of my work, I mean, I started out being somewhat of a realist, and then I got into surrealism and more kind of fantasy work. But over the combining the different experiences, I've come to understand like color, form, shape, all have very powerful energetic frequencies.
Absolutely.
So in the work, I go beyond just the symbology or the metaphoric relationships between the images, and actually use the shapes, the colors, the forms, to kind of create a vibrational frequency that also helps and assists people to be able to shift in their own, again, support their own spiritual practice.
Fantastic.
Okay, well, I think we're ready to show some of your pictures. Painting, there's one.
This particular piece was also a cover for the Door Opener magazine about a year ago. And this is part of a series of chakras, and this one deals with the heart chakra. And if you look at the images, and it's kind of hard to see it because there's a lot of detail going on in there. And it's all of these little kind of abstract shapes that are there. They're basically kind of unformed energy packets, if you will. But if you look at it closer on, you'll start to see that some of those energy packets become actually forms of life. In other words, there's images of children, of flowers, of houses, relationships.
The detail when you get close up to your work is amazing. And it has a whole different feel, whether you're standing further or closer.
And that's part of the premise of the work, is to be able to draw people into the paintings. And, and the beauty of it, I know it's successful when I have a lot of different people come up to me and tell me they see very different things.
Yes,
right.
Yes.
It speaks to them differently.
Exactly.
Okay, we have another one, I think, here.
We could switch to the
next
shot
one.
of Richard's other painting.
This one is one of my personal favorites, and again, it's part of this meditation series. But this one deals with the throat chakra. And I actually, in all these paintings, were channeled, and so the specific series. And this particular one, when I channeled this painting, I did it, and actually, I painted this one over the course of probably about 4 or 5 hours nonstop. I mean, I literally kind of came out of the trance 4 hours later going, where'd the time go? Hungry, tired, everything else. But it spoke to me directly because it's the chakra of communication. And I've kind of come to discover that my journey in life is really about being able to share my adventures, my experience from a more grounded perspective. You know, it's again, my spiritual journey has actually been very, like I say, very grounded, very practical in a sense. And I think people need to hear that, because I think a lot of people fear that somehow if they pursue their spiritual interest, that it's going to kind of take them some kind of wild or mystical place.
That's a good point. Yeah, that's a good point. People become afraid when they think like that, and they might
they don't understand that part of enlightenment is about understanding the lower vibrations as well, the lower energies as well, and accepting them and incorporating them. And
that's an excellent point.
I think we all try to reach that state of enlightenment without first dealing with those lower energies.
One of the masters I've worked with is a world-famous Qigong master named Ken Cohen, and he's actually a Taoist monk and a PhD in Chinese philosophy. And he had quoted to me, one of his masters had said to him a great saying that said, "The more you're grounded, the more that you can spiritually ascend." And again, in my personal practice, I come to find that has great bearing in truth, and so I pass it on to my students as well. Because you need to be able to be anchored in order to feel, again, that safety of being able to pursue a greater depth of your own inner world, so to speak, and inner vision. So.
So you teach many different things, right?
Yes, I do.
What are some of the things that you do teach for the audience to know?
Primarily what I do teach is, I call a form of spiritual alchemy, which is really kind of an integrated combination at the very core and roots of shamanism and Taoism. Where they're similar is they believe in a process of experiential transformation, which means you not only have an intellectual spiritual experience, but you try to create the personal experience through physical activity. So, for example, Qigong is a series of meditation exercises where you work with your own internal energy. You learn to control it, you learn to ground it, you learn to be able to manifest it and project it. So a lot of the Qigong and the Reiki healers, basically what they're doing is learning to project their own life force energy to be able to work with healing other people. The other thing, so everything is kind of based...
Channel more divine energy.
Exactly. And so the foundation of spiritual alchemy is about working with people, number one, supporting that it is a personal journey, that there is no one path necessarily out there, but there's a lot of disciplines and a lot of tools that are available, that if you use them with integrity, they can take you ultimately to your higher self and to your source of beingness. So in support of that, I also teach Tai Chi Qigong. I teach a form of creative, I guess you might say creative mastery, where you work with the creative processes in support of the spiritual journey and in support of the personal focus that you're trying to accomplish in creation. And I also do I teach trans-channel meditation, which is something that I personally have relied on very strongly in the last 10 years as my direct connection to Source. And again, for those in the audience who don't really understand that term, it's a Native American term, and it actually translates from the Taoist too, which basically is their idea of God, which is the source of all that is. So it's almost beyond any kind of personality or human traits. It's that's so great it can't be defined. That's their...
I think some people have some difficulty with the channeling because they've been so trained that, for instance, if they've been brought up with certain religious beliefs that this was the word that's given to them, and they don't understand that the communication has never stopped. It continues on, and
absolutely,
it's important to be open to that communication, that anybody could receive that from the divine.
Absolutely. And in my personal experience, and again, I think, there's many paths to the source. It's many paths to your own enlightenment and conscious expansion. For me personally, I found that through my connections with my guides, and again, I need to stress that it's not a light affair. I spent, again, over 25 years really working in these disciplines, developing this practice, learning to heal myself intellectually, spiritually, emotionally, in order to become a clear channel in expression of that higher frequency of energy. And what most people don't really understand, because again, there's a lot of mythology about what is medium, what is channeling. When you start having all the horror movies, that show somebody going into some strange little effect.
Right, I think the media paints a unfavorable picture sometimes.
Either scary or funny, silly.
And it shouldn't be something to be feared.
No,
I guarantee you my head doesn't. I may make some funny facial expressions, but my head doesn't turn around. It doesn't really go anywhere, so don't be shocked.
Right.
But I really think that that's a big criteria for finding somebody who you can trust to be able to present information to you is knowing that they've gone through that process and they have that clear connection. And the other aspect of it is if you can look at all the worlds as a vibrational frequency,
Right.
the really dense physical world is a lower vibration. So naturally, what we call the spirit world, or of God or angels or anything else, is very high vibrational consciousness. So the trick is to be able to raise your own energy enough
Right.
to be able to have a stronger connection.
While still being connected to this planet, which I think we're here to do something,
Absolutely.
for. So I think it's important that grounding and not to feel this need to rise above too quickly.
Exactly. But I also think it's wonderful, and I encourage, and part of my teachings is to really support people and teach them skills to be able to connect with their own inner guides. Because again, it's a very strong element in Taoism and shamanism, whereas your true path, your true master is that higher aspect of yourself. And so through these techniques, you can learn to connect with that part of you. And therefore, that's the part that knows where you need to be next, and that's the part you can trust the most.
The religion versus spirituality. I'm starting some classes where I'm teaching spirituality, and this is one of the questions that is in my flyer about what we're going to discuss. And what you had just said before about the book and the Bible and the end, and that's all there is. Everyone has the potential to do this. That's what people don't realize. We all have it in us, but people are afraid because they don't understand it.
Absolutely.
You know, and we all have. Well, certain religions call them guardian angels, but there are angels, so to speak, not with wings, but there are people who act like angels, and the guides and the teachers, and everyone can do this. This is what we want you to know out there, that you can all do this. This is why we have.
It's a muscle that if you're willing to, I think, explore it, you can strengthen that muscle. I know in our practices where we use a lot of intuition, and the more you practice it, the stronger it gets.
I think it's somewhat of a delicate subject in a way when people start comparing spirituality and religions. And to be honest with you, from my perspective, I think they're not necessarily the same thing.
No.
You can be very religious and not be very spiritual. And
Right,
that's okay.
absolutely. Exactly.
You can be involved with your community and hold a high level of moral and ethical ground, and that's fine. But when you choose, again, as Chester said to me, once you choose this path to go into this a spiritual exploration, there is no turning back, because what happens is your consciousness can't help but expand. And as you become more aware of the world around you, both the inner world and the outer world, your view of the world changes dramatically. Yet, again, they're not in competition with each other. You can pursue a spiritual path and become more enlightened and expand your understanding and your wisdom, and not necessarily be in conflict with a religious or community structure. I think that the sad part is in some, especially in our history, that some of the more organized religions have kind of seen an opportunity to exercise a greater level of power. Because if they can, think about it, if they can convince you that they're the only way.
And the fear.
That's right, and that's what they really do try to do, say that you're the only way, that's the only way to get back.
Exactly.
And like I said earlier about the communication, that that it hasn't ended, and messages can still be received, even by the average person. So some people think that you need to be this wonderful prophet in order to receive this communication from the divine, and
I'm sure glad that's not true, because I wouldn't be here right now if it was.
Absolutely not.
One of the things I always love to offer about myself is, like I say, and I have to be careful because I know this is a general audience here, so I don't want to get too much detail.
That's okay.
But I've had, as most artists had, somewhat of a colorful history, and I've had my bad moments. I mean, I've had my moments of being, afraid, isolated, et cetera, et cetera. And that's part of my gift. I mean, when I work with these people, I think it's a big tragedy when a lot of these so-called spiritual leaders go out there and they try to posture themselves as being greater than the people
the ego
that they're
gets
there
too
to help.
involved. Absolutely.
Because it creates this illusion that, number one, they can't do it because somehow you're more special than they are. But on the other hand, by me being able to say, look, this is who I am. I'm a human being. I've done human things, but I can also do these wonderful demonstrations of spirit, and you can too.
That's right. You can too.
And I think it helps you grow in compassion. I think that if you haven't had those knocks in life, that makes it more difficult to relate to the people that you're hoping to help. And
absolutely,
people tend to worship the person who's doing this, the
As
teacher,
opposed
the
to the
leader,
teachings.
as opposed to the teaching, as opposed to God, and so forth and so on. That's one of the things we talk about all the time. Don't worship. Like when we talk
Right.
about being Reiki facilitators, I'm not giving you the healing. It's coming from out
Right.
there for you,
Exactly.
just a channel. So don't think that I'm a healer. I'm not any better than you. Exactly. Your words, perfect. Perfect.
And just like you were saying, I think that's really important. I mean, when you look at the idea of channeling, a lot of people channel. I mean, artists channel all the time.
Right.
They go into these creative,
Musicians,
you know, they talk about their muse and the creative trances that they do. They're channeling.
Exactly.
It's just how they express that is, again, there's a whole slew of different ways to do that. The same thing when you're, like you said, when you're practicing Reiki or people are doing shiatsu and energy healing, they're basically channels where they're taking this higher vibrational divine energy and using it to heal by being a vehicle, offering themselves up as a
Exactly.
vehicle for other people.
That's just making that decision.
Absolutely.
I want to help.
Right.
I want to help, and that's what we do. That's it.
The powerful
Everyone can do
power
it.
of
Make that
intention.
decision.
Yeah.
You're right. It's fear.
It is.
It's
yeah.
fear that stops people, that they stop at the border, so to speak. And that's why we have this show, to
Right.
try to help them gently understand there's nothing to be afraid of. It's all God, it's all, or divine power, whatever you want to call it, that's all it is. So,
And I think, and again, I'm sure you can support me in this, but a lot of people that I've worked with in the past or have gone to see, like some of the channels that I have high regard for them, I was always amazed because sometimes it wasn't even what they said so much as the energy that they
You could
exuded.
feel, right? You could feel.
And I would
the
watch people go into these sessions, and mine as well, and they'd be skeptical and kind of closed down. And you could ask them, what did that person say? And they may not be able to tell you, but they're walking out of there feeling wonderful. And because when you sustain this higher level of frequency of energy, it automatically affects everybody else around you. So they get almost like they get a taste of that. And hopefully that also encourages them to want to pursue that. And when you finally, if your life is filled with, like you say, fear, loneliness, uncertainty, if you get to feel what it's like to be grounded and to feel in a state of well-being, like it's okay in the world. And ultimately enough, think about it, all the spiritual paths always talk about one important thing, and it's faith. And what real faith means is when you're at that door, like I say, when spirits are banging at the door, so to speak, you can choose to ignore it and walk away. But the great gifts and answers are on the other side, and really all that knocking goes away the minute that you are okay with it. Because it's the fear
Yeah.
that
it's the
changes
fear.
that energy.
Allows it to flow into your life.
you're right.
What is the experience of channeling for you? Do you have any physical effects come over you, or what does it feel like?
Well, originally, like I say, I kind of channeled for many years, mostly privately. And I think that, interestingly enough, the most powerful physiological effects that I experienced was when I started going more public. And what I tried to do is, as I went, try to work with the higher vibrational frequency energies, every time I would do that, sometimes it would actually be a physiological effect upon me. For example, I started channeling this group that's called Wisdom of Light, and it's actually this group of higher consciousness that's kind of, in a sense, the caretakers of the Akashic Records. So there's almost no personality there, but it's just this beautiful, loving, conscious energy.
And could you explain to our viewers about Akashic Records? I'm familiar with
Certainly.
them.
The Akashic Records are basically an etheric, if you can imagine, like a library of consciousness, that in this library holds all the information of everyone's life, every lifetime they've ever had, where they've been and where they're going. And ultimately, the hard part to understand is we're actually all of these things at once. And even in this
Right.
lifetime, we're kind of experiencing a very
exist.
small piece of that. It's all happening at the same time. And so the beauty of the Akashic Records is it can become a very strong tool for spiritual healing, because when you can access people's information from karmic events or archetypal events, it can give new meaning and understanding to personal experiences, traumas, etc., that they're feeling in their current life. And it gives them new tools to be able to understand why this is happening and how they can change their attitudes, which would shift that energy and therefore not have to repeat that behavior anymore. But so again, it's accessible to everybody, but it's about being able to manage to achieve that high vibrational frequency, to match it, and that's when the information starts coming through. The physiological experiences that I had, and again, I've gone through many physical disciplines, diet, again through the Qigong, how to build my body up to be able to handle and sustain that high energy. There was one time I remember for a while I would get these, when I first started channeling the wisdom of light, I'd get these severe headaches and
I
the
was
pain.
getting bad headaches when I started
Yeah.
practicing Reiki, and it depended. It was interesting because it was always a certain type of client that I would get it with. Like it was almost predictable, and then later on I'm like, I have this horrible headache, and finally learned some tricks around that, but it took me a while.
Yeah.
So what would you just give one idea to the audience? Why you would get a headache from?
Well, in
doing
my
it?
particular situation, because I was trying, I used to, like I said, but I still do at time when it's appropriate, but I would also channel sometimes like Archangel Michael and Gabriel. I worked a lot with that energy. And that's a different frequency energy. So when I was trying to shift to the higher stuff, my body had to be able to adjust to sustain it. The first couple of times I experienced it, it was all wonderful, but then my body couldn't keep it for very long. So when I made it a conscious effort to want to be able to develop the ability to hold it, I had to work at developing that practice. So at first it was really the body's metabolism has to adjust to be able to hold that frequency. And I actually sought out the advice of another channel who I have great regard for. And the advice to me was to make some simple changes in my diet. And when I did that, within 3 or 4 days, they went away, and I never.
I know.
had
I think it was dehydration. I think the amount of electrical stimulation that was going on through the channeling, through pulling in that energy was affecting me if I wasn't well hydrated.
Absolutely.
Like if it was
and I think that's a common. I mean, most people who get into this have that experience.
Okay.
The other
I was
thing is
wondering.
you generate a lot of heat, which is a byproduct of that.
Yes, I notice after I'm through giving a Reiki session, I go into the ladies' room and my eyes are kind of red. The
Yeah.
whites are kind of red. Yeah, the energy that comes through. I know it's always the same. I see that.
And that's also, on the other hand, that's a toll that I think most channels, and I've had many friends in the past who have, again, been very gifted in this area, and a lot of them, the biggest struggle is being able to manage. If you can imagine, in order to do this, you have to be very sensitive to these frequencies of energy. You also become more sensitive to other individuals around you and their energy.
I was trying to explain that to one of my
That's true.
clients recently that, what seems like a curse can be a gift because, if you're sensitive even to like allergens or people in your environment, that it generally means that you have this, higher awareness of those frequencies out there. And if you could just learn how to...
I always like when I'm talking to my students, I refer to the predisposition. So there are, and a lot of people have, they call it intuition, they have a lot of different names for it that makes it comfortable. It's the same stuff. And the idea is that a lot of people have a natural predisposition to this or a talent, but you have to develop it. And then the downside, I mean, I've worked with people who have suffered, and actually they've been put on antipsychotic drugs for basically because they couldn't take the energy. I mean, they were stressed out and having a high anxiety. And when I had done readings for them, I found out that they're empaths. But they had no training in order to
And then
stop that energy.
when the fear is there, unfortunately,
Yeah,
they can't get past the fear to experience the wonder of it all.
Exactly. And ironically enough, a lot of these current medications, what they do is they block the energy off.
Poof,
so you
forget
can't
that.
achieve that any longer. So there, and again, I think it's important for people out there who are having these experiences to realize that it's not a freakish thing. It's actually very normal to the human condition.
Exactly.
And there are ways to learn to control it, to make peace with it, if you will. And again, they're wonderful talents if you choose to develop them.
And you're right about how you eat to take care of your body, how you meditate, how you align yourself. All that's important.
Absolutely.
So you're absolutely. Okay.
So we're hoping that we could get a little experience of your trance channeling tonight. Would you?
I'd be
able
happy
to
to,
do that?
and
I know.
will definitely try to be conscious of the time, because oftentimes the guides
I
aren't.
know.
So
We'll have to
we'll
tell the
probably-
guys it's time to
it's
wrap
time to
it
go.
up.
They'll keep it brief.
We'll do this towards the end of the show, I guess.
Yeah,
All
well,
right,
I
okay.
figured maybe if we do that now, and then we can, wrap. That way it'll give Richard
Okay.
enough time, and then we can get into some other subjects. At the
All right,
end.
that'd be good.
If you
Good
just,
idea.
give me a few seconds, I'm just going to kind of shift
Okay.
gears here, and we'll see what comes through. Greetings, precious ones. It is the group known as the Wisdom of Light. We are grateful to be invited to be present at this time and to speak to all of the beings of the world of the earth in such a dimension in their willingness to listen to our humble words and to allow the energies of the universe to flow freely and touch their hearts in any small way that is possible, and they are open and willing. The greatest and simplest message of all is to express that all of you, each and every one, is a master in your own right. You are not becoming, you are not something less than. Quite the contrary. You could not operate in your physical reality, in the densest of worlds in all of the universe, if you were not masters of both spirit and physicality. Yet, just as a deep-sea diver plunges into the great pressures of the depths of the ocean, it is a cumbersome act at the very least. You struggle in just trying to survive, to understand and remember who you are. A lot of the energies that are being sent to the world as you inhabit at this time, as well as many of the more enlightened beings who are coming to support you and act as guides, to help you to return to your deeper awareness. In fact, it is a guidance to help you remember your own divinity. And to this end, it is also important for all of you to know, do not judge yourselves or others based on where you believe you must be in your lifetime. There is no hierarchy or graduation. Each and every one of you is exactly where you need to be at this current time frame in your journey. It is as a master that you may choose to experience more depth of information regarding emotions or relationships, and so therefore you may find yourself in a life of drama. You may find yourself addicted to alcohol or drugs, or even uncertain in your own journeys, yet it is for you to learn the compassion, so that when you achieve that place of enlightenment once again, you may hold your heart open and judge not harshly others. This is the true meaning and experience and expression of how the universe works, how Spirit teaches. So these words are meant to encourage you to allow yourself to be a divine being, no matter where you are or how your life unfolds. Yet there are wonderful opportunities at foot. These opportunities to shift the dynamics, to become more conscious of your journey, and to be more of a conscious participant. As we like to say, you are all going down this river of life in a canoe. Your choices, though, this free will choice, is as this. You can face forward and be an active participant in the journeying, in the steering, and the experiences to which you are going through, or you may continue to face backward and only experience what you have passed and what you fear. So it is our choice to reach out to assist you in any way possible. Not only us, but your own guides, each and every day, work diligently to offer you love, compassion, and guidance if you only allow the information to penetrate your hearts and your minds. And so with this, we wish to encourage you to seek more consciously your own evolution. For it is in this searching that you will not only learn to deal with your fears, but you will find your greatest expression of beingness. You will find that peace of mind and sense of well-being and the deep inner core of wealth you all deeply seek. So with these words, we would hope you would take them to heart and consider them. And as we pass forward again, we will leave you with these blessings of love and of grace. Blessings be. That was interesting.
It's very powerful.
Sometimes I only catch little glimpses, so I'll have to look at the tape after this.
Yeah, that was very interesting. And the people understand that years ago there used to be a medium in a dark room with a crystal ball and so forth and so on. And
a lot of pomp and circumstance.
Yes, yes. And different groups that I've been into, and I realized that it's impression. They impress you. It can be lots of lights. It can be anywhere. So there's nothing to be afraid of. They impress you, and the words flow. And you know, I think you probably have all had this at some particular time. You're trying to explain something to someone, and you can't find the words, and all of a sudden you find the words, and they come right out at you, right? And they flow, and they flow, and you say, and you finish, you go, whoa, did I say that? You know, did I say that come from me? That's your teachers, your guides helping you. So that's what it's all about.
And a big part of this is being able to surrender, and that's
Exactly.
also it's a hard thing because again it deals with fear.
Exactly.
So and it's interesting because when I'm experiencing it, I found that when I need to know what's being said, that I'm kind of like brought into the conversation. And there's times where I do channel sessions for people, and I have no idea. It's just I just kind of relax and get out of the way.
Get out of the way.
And it kind of feels like, if you can imagine, and again I think this is a great metaphor, but it's almost like your spirit's like a balloon in your body. And what happens is when a guide comes in, they tend to kind of push you aside a little bit. And so part of the practice is being able to be comfortable with allowing that energy to come through. And it's also the passion of the reception. So when I'm working with somebody, if they're really open and receptive, more information flows through, and it's much faster.
Absolutely. And I find that I do tarot readings as well, and I find that too, that it's very similar to how I operate with the energy work, is that a lot of times the intuitive impressions I get really vary based on that person and how they're coming to me, if they're receptive or open.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's even the same with Reiki. With Reiki,
Same, that's what I said,
if they're
it's
receptive and
surprising.
open, we get intuitively more information for them. The energy flows nicer.
I could feel it like a magnet just pulling.
Yeah, exactly. I almost felt like I was lifting off for one person that was their energy was so good. So you're absolutely right.
Go back, yeah.
Another really important thing that, again, information I was given from the high guides that I work with, and again, is to take this out of the superstitious or out of the dark, which I think is a great metaphor. But really, we're all, again, the message is we're all divine beings. And if you think about that for a minute, because there are things that people do that seem to be metaphysical actions, and again, they're not fakery. People can project their energy, and it'll have an effect on you. But at the same time, if you are this divine being, you also have the right to not take that energy.
Absolutely.
Right.
So I've talked to people who've come to me and said, "Oh, gee, I think I'm possessed." And I'm like, "Well, you're allowing yourself to be possessed." And they don't like that answer because they don't want to take responsibility. But the bottom line is your spirit is as strong as any spirit that's out there. So if somebody's taking you over, it's because you're giving it over.
Right.
So again, this is how it really works. The other thing that's really important in the history of this, and mind you, I'm just really starting to learn this stuff now as I'm becoming more public. I'm kind of getting this information. Because my journey was very kind of intimate. I mean, most of the people I worked with, it was a group of 3 or 4 apprentices, and that's how it unfolded. But what I wanted to share with you is there's still several very, very talented people who do what's called evidential channeling or evidential mediumship. And they're the ones that, if you have that experience, there's one I absolutely love. And what he does is he has it's called a billet, and it's a basket. And it has a cloth bag in this basket. And what you do is you have a blank card, like a 3x5 index card. You write your name on it, and you throw it in this billet. The billet goes on the table, like that plant. He starts channeling and working with all the individuals in the room. At the end of the experience, he opens up the billet, and all these cards are covered with incredible drawings, incredible paintings.
Wow.
He throws in a bunch of markers and colored pencils and stuff, sayings and people's names and signatures. And these are all people, either your guides from your past life, sometimes images from your past life. And he does private readings where he will interpret these. And again, you can sit there and you can put your hand under the basket and over the basket, and there's nothing there. It's really amazing.
That is amazing.
That is amazing.
That really is.
But I think what's important to understand now, and again, from what I do, is there is no separation.
Right.
It's really trying to keep it down to earth and being, more every day.
And I think what's important is that I think there was a place, and there is still a place for ritual and ceremony if it helps you to connect.
Absolutely.
But I think as we evolve, we need that less and less. Wouldn't you agree? Like that,
Certainly.
it's not necessary unless you feel that that's what you need to, get centered and to
Absolutely.
pull that in.
In the teaching Qigong, one of the things that we try to stress is visualization is really important in internal focus. And the idea is, what ritual does is it provides you with objects and elements that you can draw on in order to strengthen your connection and to help you hold that. As you gain more mastery, you really don't need those things anymore.
Right.
You can sustain that direct connection longer.
Which I think makes it a little easier for a person who isn't as familiar with channeling and you know, mediumism, because I think that if they see that, you know, that it doesn't require all of this, you know, all of these preparations, all of this material, all of this circumstance around them, that it could be a very commonplace thing.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, I really encourage people, particularly for an individual, for
Right.
yourself, to work with developing a connection with your guides.
Absolutely.
And I would offer to you that all of you had mentioned tarot, people that do divination through pendulums. There's a lot of different vehicles, and basically that's what they are. They're vehicles in. So again, I mean, years ago I'd learned tarot, and I'd learned what they call the Native American tradition is bones. It would have bones
right,
from
right.
small
Right, yeah.
bird, and they would
Bones,
throw
yeah.
the bones.
I think we've seen it on TV and movies.
Which is amazing,
yeah.
because when I used to
Yeah.
do readings, you'd watch the bones go and flip over because of the energy in order to get the patterns.
Right.
You know, so it's a very, very powerful experience. But again, over
There's I
time,
Ching.
you just in the I Ching, but over time, you just don't need them anymore.
right,
You
exactly.
can just again plug directly in.
Right.
So again, I think it's if that makes people feel comfortable, if it's something that supports them in that personal connection to their guides, then by all means, I think it's a very worthwhile endeavor. And it strengthens their connection, and then eventually, again, if you choose to go farther, you know, the discipline comes in if you really, like I say, if you want to make it something that's your life work. Like I say, well, I do what I do because I'm really drawn to it, and I love the connection, I love being able to support people. So I'm willing to put the energy and the effort into it. It may not be for everybody, and that's fine. You don't need to do that. But how many people go out there and they just have that gut feeling? You know, it's like you're going to buy this car or buy that car, and they go, it just feels right.
Exactly.
Right.
Well, that's your guides. You know, that's your guidance.
For those times we don't listen to our gut.
Yeah, and then
Exactly.
hit you in
We
the
pay the
face.
consequence.
And we all have this, no matter what walk of life we are. We all have
Oh,
that
yeah.
gut feeling that we really, really should listen to.
Absolutely.
And you're right, when we don't, then we say, oh my God, why didn't I listen, right? Yeah, it's true. So that's a part of it. A simple part, but that's a part of it.
It's a very strong one,
Yeah.
I think, and it's a good start. It's a good way
Exactly.
to begin the process.
It's exactly.
Now, Richard, do you do a lot of work with people one-on-one, or do you find that you're working more with groups? And
It's actually both, but I think the majority of my practice, and I think the most beneficial aspect of it is doing private sessions. But in the private sessions, so much information that comes through for them. I provide a
Yeah.
tape and a CD.
unique to that particular
Exactly,
person.
and their journey and what's going on for them. And again, I've had some great results as far as people making some dramatic, life-changing choices, and had experienced really profound success with that through the information they got through these sessions. But again, it's not a miracle thing, you know. And anybody that tries to sell you the snake oil or the magic pill, walk away.
Absolutely.
Because bottom line is, you
Absolutely.
can get the information, you can get the support. You got to do your own work.
You do have to work. You do have to do the work.
It's like with Reiki and Qigong, it's the same thing. You can go in and, if you can imagine an auric field, like your body has a certain energy field, and it needs to be sustained to be of its own, your greatest health. What happens is things in your life can push it off, so a Reiki person goes in and it kind of brings it back into alignment.
Right.
Same thing with acupuncture. If you don't do the work to heal yourself, whatever got you there in the first place, it's going to come back.
That's so true. That's exactly what I tell my clients. You don't just come in here and say, okay, I have this this lump over here and we're going to get rid of it.
Magically
You
get
know,
rid of
magically.
it.
No, you have to work. You have to. I say, the guides and the teachers come and tell me what I should tell you that you should do to help this situation and get yourself better. Some people don't want to do that homework, but
Right.
you
And
know,
I think
we have to be honest right at the onset. There's no miracle things here.
No.
This is not a miracle cures. There's no miracle cures, period. No matter what you enter into, right?
Absolutely.
You have to do the homework.
And I would offer to you, again, it strengthens that belief about the fact that we are all our own masters. So if you can accept that premise, then how can I how can I really
Right.
change your world? I can help you change your world.
Exactly.
But if you're a master and I'm a master, I have no influence over you. I really don't
Right.
have no power over you. And that's a scary thing, because when people start to really own that, they are their own masters, that means a lot of people can't control them in their lives. And there's a lot of people who don't want
a lot
that.
of doctors out of a job too.
A lot of politicians,
Oh, yeah.
the list goes on and on.
Unfortunately, yes.
Exactly.
And so, but again, to take control of your own life, to be empowered, that's when the magic comes in, and that's when the real success happens, and the real peace of mind comes up.
And I know a big piece that we work on is breaking down that resistance, because I think that a lot of people, they're so entrenched in this victimization that they have a hard time accepting that power that's within them, and they want to put it out externally, like somebody outside myself is responsible for this, so somebody outside myself should be the one to fix it, as opposed to accepting that responsibility is a huge
And that's
factor
a
in
social, archetypal, philosophical approach, and it's again, it's throughout our whole culture and has been for thousands of years. So this is not just an individual issue;
No.
it's something that our culture is beginning to shift, and it's time. I mean, our world is needing to evolve, and
Right.
we as human beings need to evolve and kind of grow up. And that's the
Yeah.
way I refer to it. Is it's like we're kind of spiritual babies, but now we need to grow up, and
I
we need
think
to
we're
be
spiritual
mature.
teenagers right now,
Yeah.
Jen. Testing
testing the
ourselves, you know?
There's a turn of time coming upon us
Yeah.
now, and it's a spiritual turn of time. And you can hear that everywhere if you listen. From any group, from other people, it is. It's truly, to be born in this time is a privilege.
Oh,
And
absolutely.
we have requested it to be born in this time to help with the transition. So,
And one of the things I draw optimism from is, in my experience, is a lot of the young people that I've been working with, you know,
Yeah.
I'm amazed because it's just so much easier for them.
yes,
Indigo
it
children,
is.
right?
You know, and I'm like, darn it, I
I
had to
know.
work
Well,
really
I
hard
have
for
2
this.
children, and I'm just blown away by what they know. You know, my youngest will go around saying, "Oh, I'm really happy with the body I chose in this life," and I'm like, "She's 5, you know, that she is aware that she had
That's
other
great.
lives, and you know, she's walking around, strutting around like, you know, I'm really proud of what I picked this time around," and if you encourage that, they just give you so much, like juicy bits of knowledge that they have that you can really.
And again, I think that's a part of it, is a big part of it. Why it's easier now for a lot of the children is because, or younger people, is because their parents were a little bit more open-minded and a little more receptive. When I grew up, unfortunately, it was a big taboo. You didn't talk about that stuff.
Right.
And one of my early on experiences was I almost died of scarlet fever.
Oh wow!
I was very young. I think I was like probably 4 or 5 years old, and I started having, you know, hallucinations.
Yeah,
and then I
out-of-body
started seeing.
experience.
I mean, that was the first recollection I had of, you know, working with spirits. I mean, they were there. They were coming and comforting me, and, you know, supporting me and stuff. And that connection stayed. And so there was one time in particular, which I'll just share this quick story. I remember as a little kid, you know, we're all playing in the basement, you know, we're running around this couch playing tag or whatever. And one of the side effects for a few years after with the scarlet fever is I'd actually have these spikes of high temperature, and I'd go into these convulsions and basically pass out and go into a coma. So one time I was running with the kids, chasing them around, and I remember as I was chasing, it felt like I was getting taller, which I thought was pretty cool, you know, so I'm getting bigger, and I'm kind of floating above the other kids, still chasing them around in a circle. And then I noticed out of the corner of my eye, there was my body laying on the couch. And right about the same time I noticed it, my older brother noticed it and panicked and screamed to my mother, and I'm still like, what's going on? You know, why is everybody getting upset now? And then my mother comes down and she gets really upset and sticks the spoon in my mouth.
Oh
and,
God!
you know, is you know, getting all upset, and the energy of that fear and that terror was like sucking me back into my
Right.
body. And it literally, like I said, I'll always remember this. It was almost a violent crash back into my body. And so when I kind of came out of the coma or whatever, that my mother was like, "Oh, you all right?" And I said, "Yeah, I'm fine." You know, I was just dancing with, I was playing with the kids and, you know, playing with the angels, you know, and, you know, these. Don't ever talk about that.
I know.
There's nobody
It's
there like
taboo.
it. So it was like, you know.
Well, I had an experience like that where my mother didn't tell me not to talk about it. So I went to school and I did talk about it. And you know, I was I think 8 at the time, and
That's
you know, it was tough to deal with the peers.
It's lonely. I saw spirit when I was a little girl, and I played with angels and invisible little beings. And it's so lonely because you can't tell anyone.
Exactly.
And I tried to tell one of my favorite aunts once, and she patronized me. "Oh yeah, I see it." And even as a little 3-year-old, because that's when it
Right.
happened, I knew
You knew that
she was doing. I didn't know what patronize meant, but I knew that she was just trying to make me feel good. And so after a while, I just learned I could talk to animals and all that. After a while, I just learned to just keep it to myself. It's kind of lonely, but when it happens when you're a child.
And I think that's a great.
But it's nice. But yeah.
But also it's part of the journey. And again, I look back at some of the things, like I said, I was lonely, I was isolated, but it also forced me to develop a lot of these
Yeah.
interconnections. And so there was a lot of blessings wrapped into that trauma. At the
Absolutely.
time, it was, difficult. But in hindsight, I mean, I wouldn't be who I am today if I hadn't gone through those events. And again, there's life traumas, and you have to rise above it. Otherwise, you're going to get swept away. So they are gifts. They are great gifts. I think the tragedy is when we can't embrace the gifts and see the value in them and use them to grow rather than to use them to hold us back. That is really kind of
And
sad.
I always feel that if people were to talk about these experiences more
Absolutely.
openly and with one another, how much we would grow leaps and bounds, because we're all having these experiences. But
Absolutely. And I think the silly
Nobody's-
part is that, again, people are afraid to share it, but once
Right.
you give them permission to share it, it's amazing. Like the people who come forward from all walks of life, and all of a sudden they start sharing their experiences, or they're curious. And I just think
Can't
it's
see it.
wonderful.
When they're not afraid,
Yeah.
that's what's wonderful.
So I think if there's any message here is to let your fears subside and really just try to embrace the gift of your journey and
absolutely.
look for people you can share it with.
I think that one experience you shared when we met you at that Soul Expo, when you had that shamanic experience, you might want to share that with the viewers. I think that really touched upon fear and facing your fear.
Yeah, and for me, it also touched upon the illusion of the separation of reality. Briefly, and I try to keep it really brief, but one of the really powerful events that I had, and I guess it was kind of like a graduation exercise, if you will. I was taken by a Lakota elder. I spent a couple of years up in Laramie, Wyoming. It has a very sacred site up there called Vitavu, which is up in the Medicine Bow mountain range. And so I was, had worked with him for about 2 years on and off, and it was at a point where I had to, kind of go through this rite of passage, another rite of passage, if you will. And again, like all, human beings and your ego, I already thought I got it all down, and I was, past my fears, so I'm good to go. But he knew better, so he invited me to go on a vision quest, and basically drove me up into these mountains, probably about 60 miles from the nearest road, about maybe 100 miles from town. Took me up to a ledge, a cliff, literally dropped me off there, and he goes, with a little water, and he said, I'll be back in 3 days. And I had to do this vision quest, and basically what it was fasting and meditating on this ledge. And you got to understand, this ledge, it really wasn't any shelter. It was kind of like a natural indentation in the side of the cliff, and on the other side is about an 80-foot drop. So, and I had a campfire, so I had enough firewood to keep campfire going, so I'm there meditating day and night. On that third night, and again, you're really starting to have all kinds of visions, and you're kind of, what it is you're dissolving the veil that separates reality from non-ordinary reality, or from spirit, from physical from spirit. So in the process of doing this, all of a sudden I looked up, and there was this huge grizzly bear that was on the other side of the campfire on towards the cliff that was rising up before me. And I don't know, I mean, I'm sure some people out there have had some experiences with grizzly bears, but if you ever see a grizzly bear in the flesh, live, it's an unmistakable experience. I mean, they're massive. It triggers a primal fear because, I mean, it's like they run about 900 pounds. They can stand 9 to 12 feet tall. They can get up to 1,400 pounds. They stink. They smell like burning rubber.
Really?
Oh, yeah. It's unmistakable. In this experience, I smelled the smell. I felt the breath. I mean, it was real for me. It was absolutely and totally real. So the panic kicks in, the terror kicks in. Mind you, the only thing that's in between me and the bear is this fire, which is dwindling, and I got no place to go except for this cliff and a little narrow path, which I came up with shaman, and it's at night. So this bear is kind of working its way around the campfire, so I'm circling the other way. So now I'm standing with my back against this cliff, and he's on the other side. And again, I had to deal with this fear coming up, and I said, no, it's a creation, like all things are, of my mind, and that I can use my mind to move through this fear. And so I kind of mustered up enough energy, and it was inching towards the fire, inching towards me. So I literally, I just mustered up enough energy, and I kind of took a shot and jumped over the fire through the bear. And as I did that, the last thing I saw was this huge paw kind of going like this across me. And then, I don't know, I lost consciousness, and I basically was awakened the next morning by, a Lakota elder coming over and kicking me, going, so how you doing? Because they know everything. He knew everything that had gone down. So I explained the experience, and he's kind of listening, and like, yeah, so what? And then he goes, you know what? He said, you stink. Go down to the river and clean up. So, and again, I'm still kind of shaky and delirious and stuff. So I make my way down the path and go to the the stream to clean up, and I'm kind of splashing myself. And I had taken my shirt off, and the splashing water. And I looked in the water, and I noticed that I had these huge welts across my chest, literally this far across, just as if I had been hit by that paw.
Wow.
And it stayed with me for about 3 or 4 days after that
Wow,
experience.
isn't
before
that
they went
amazing?
away.
So realistic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the more important aspect of it, whatever occurred to me internally was something shifted, and that enabled me to move so much farther in my own spiritual practice. Because literally the fear of dying, the fear of being destroyed, it no longer was important. It was no longer real to me anymore.
Wow.
And that's kind of, and it's
Yeah.
also symptomatic of this journey. At some point in time, you really do need to face your worst fears, whatever they are.
You're right. That is.
Emotional,
Absolutely.
physical, etc.
And just the power of the mind, where you can, just drawing that image up in your mind to actually how it affects the body, like to have that physical remnant of something that you experienced, and I think that's what happens when we're manifesting all these illnesses too. It's just it's the mind that's playing.
Well, again, the premise behind Chinese medicine is that the true dis-ease starts in the heart. It starts in the spirit.
Absolutely.
And so again, there's a lot of natural healers that are out there, but what I really choose to work with is people's spirits, because if you can get them to heal the internal process or get through that part of their lives that they need to heal or transform, it's amazing how much of the physical symptoms disappear and go away as a result of that.
Okay. Well, I really enjoyed this evening with you, and the
It went by
wonderful-
so fast.
It really
I
did.
can't believe it. It's so fast.
Absolutely.
It was wonderful.
And if you would like to get in touch with Richard, we have some contact information for you. Here we go. His name is Richard Gould. You can visit his website at rgouldart.com, and you can contact him via email at rgouldart@hotmail.com. Okay. Thank you for joining us.
Well, thank you very much. It was a pleasure
Thank
being
you
here.
so much.
So much.
Maybe we can have you back again one day.
Okay.
Yeah, we
That would be
would love to.
wonderful. There's so much
many
to talk
topics.
about. You're so interesting. You're into so much that this would be great. It'd be terrific. So
That's my pleasure.
we'll be in touch. It's
Thanks,
great.
Michelle, and blessings.
Blessings.
Thank
And to
you.
everyone out there as well. Thank you.
Okay, now if you'd like to get in touch with myself or Rosemary, we're going to show you that information now. Okay, to contact us, you can reach Rosemary at 203-627-7966. You can reach myself at 203-232-3405. And if you'd like to email us your questions, either regarding tonight's show or any shows that we present here, we'd be happy to answer them on the air. And that's healoutsidethebox@yahoo.com. And for show schedules, you can visit www.entirebeing.com. Okay, we're going to leave you, as we usually do, with a quote from our
Book of Courage, and tonight it is, "To live without fear, we must fully understand and appreciate that every situation and every outcome is nothing but perfect, including the outcome we seem to fear most, which is death. Except there is no death. We merely make a transition into the non-physical. Our life continues, and death is the door to a new adventure. For too long we have spent much energy in fearing death. If we now accept the true nature of death, these energies will then change us with life."
Okay, we'd like to thank you for joining us tonight.
Yes, thank you very much.
We hope that you stay in tune. See you next time. Bye-bye.
Good night. Take care.
As you look out through the window to the world you have made, always know you are the vision. See the truth, darkness fade.